All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for jumping on the workshop. I know there's some others that will be jumping on today, and I've met some of you. I've not met all of you, but I really appreciate you taking the time. The plan today is to walk through some of the steps that we teach companies so that they can build a culture of good within their organization. And so I'll be sharing some slides today. I would encourage you to grab a piece of paper, pencil or pen. And it is a workshop, so I'm going to be asking some questions, and we'll be looking for you to do some work on your end so that you actually come out of this workshop with some answers and maybe some strategy going into this coming year of 2022. What I know is that as leaders, and those of you that have jumped on, we all have a desire to lead people well and to do so in a way that brings them fulfillment and allows them to really connect what they do every single day in their work life with a greater sense of purpose, a greater sense of care for themselves, for their colleagues, and also for the community around them. And so we'll be going through some of those steps. In order to operationalize all of that work, you'll need strategy. And one of the things I want to encourage each one of us today is to really consider what our strategy is for our culture and people in this coming year. We all know that recruiting, retention, and really onboarding and all of those elements of the employee experience is so crucial to how they connect to the overall culture of the business, and being so more now important when there is a shortage of employees to choose from. And it does feel like a great challenge, but also a great opportunity to say, how are we as a business going to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace? How do we say this is what makes us special without really focusing on our culture and our people, not just being just slightly intentional, but really putting it at the forefront of our work. And so that's really what culture work is, because culture, as I define it, is how most people feel, believe, and behave most of the time. So when we're thinking about a culture of good, we're saying that what is good for all the stakeholders. And so we'll discuss elements of that and how to connect the stakeholders together around a common cause, and then look at what the values work within an organization. What at Culture of Good we call 5 promises, but as a business, you have values, and how do you take those values that are yours, that are really dear to the heart and soul of who you are as a business, and how do you measure those without losing your soul? What makes you special? How do you measure whether people are living up to those values without using values as a way to punish when they don't? How do you positively reinforce that values work throughout your organization? And then how do you motivate and mobilize all the stakeholders to get behind a cause, or what we call a force for good, that really drives not only the success of your culture, but quite frankly, the success of your business. And so let's jump right in. And I'm going to share my screen here. So yeah, building a culture of good in your organization in 2022. A culture of good, when we talk about culture of good, we're talking about more than just the business that I run. So we're looking at a culture of good is how companies engage employees, customers, and community in one streamlined effort. So when you think about an organization, most of the time, these are very siloed efforts and initiatives that have a specific amount of resource behind them. Obviously, allotted resources necessary in terms of employees and coworkers and whatever you want to call employees, teammates, In terms of the engagement around your employee workforce, the experience and engagement of customers and how they connect with your culture and connect with what makes you special. And then your community. When we talk about a culture of good, we think and filter the philosophy of how we're embedding culture within the business, very much so through the lens of how is this not only impacting the employees and customers, but also how is this impacting the community. So this is where we look for those partnerships with local charities and organizations, nonprofits. I spent over 20 years in nonprofit work and leading in those spaces, and came into for-profit work and recognized there was an opportunity there to mobilize employees within for-profit spaces to have a sense of purpose and meaning in the same way that I did with all of my team throughout all those years, giving back, doing good, finding a sense of fulfillment in the everyday work that we were doing. And here's what I believe that we don't have to quit our job and go work for a charity to be charitable, that we can actually go to work and craft our passion and our purpose into our everyday work. And so when we think about engagement in terms of coworkers, customers, and the community, I'd like to say that the new employee engagement is employee fulfillment. So we're not just adding another program or initiative into the business, but we're actually saying we want to embed this of who we are and what makes us special, and allow that to be translated to create opportunities for employees to find fulfillment in their work, which is a beautiful idea, I think, because depending on what industry you're in, if you're in nonprofit work, obviously it kind of comes with that work. It's very purposeful. You go into nonprofit work with a servant leadership understanding. So the question is, can you do that also in for-profit work? And I believe that you can, and I know that you can, and it's been proven to work. We know that employees want to work for companies that give them and afford them opportunities and permission to care and to give back. Companies that share their values for what matters to them. Those things are vitally important. We know that over 60% of customers choose to do business with a company that cares about doing good and also shares their values. So one of the things that I ask leaders all the time to answer is, what is the most compelling reason you can give me to work for you? What's the most compelling reason you can give me to work for you? And the second question is, what's the most compelling reason you can give me to do business with you? And I believe it's this culture work. I believe it allows what makes you special to be amplified and to enhance. And so the culture work that's necessary, I believe, is not going in and upending all the culture and doing a culture change work, but it's actually asking what makes us special and how do we add to that, add logs to the fire that's already burning. Why have people wanted to work for you in the past or work with you? Why do those that have stayed with you for some time, why do they still feel like where they work is special? Because this allows for us to see our work beyond just something that we do every day that's a check the box for a paycheck at the end of the week. We can actually add purpose into daily work that impacts the internal of our business, but also the external. And that's what we're talking about here with those three concentric circles. A culture of good is that sweet spot right in the middle. So if you're intending to build a culture that is good in this coming year, you're looking for that sweet spot. So rather than taking these as three siloed efforts, we would look at how do we streamline all of that into one and bring those three community groups together, the coworkers, customers, and community, into one effort. And that's what we'll look at today, is the connected tissue and streamlining that effort. So I'm going to go through some steps. So these steps are crucial to our process. We teach this through our culture cohort. If you want more information about that, you can reach out to me after. But for the purpose of this workshop, I want to give you the main elements. And from these main elements, if I can be of any help beyond this, certainly reach out to me. Um, no necessary to join a cohort, but if that is something that you want to do, we're going to be onboarding companies in November and December to launch in January this coming year. The elements you'll hear today are crucial steps that you can implement with or without the culture cohort, but I wanted to share these with you today. So number one that we begin to work with is finding the cause of your business. Now, again, within a nonprofit space, there's kind of a built-in cause. It comes with the territory of charitable giving back type of work. Within for-profit work, the cause of our business is our driving force for good. It's our why. So when we think about what we do every single day as a business, we also have to understand why we do it in the first place. Now, the first rule of business is to stay in business. So profitability is key. So the first reason you're in business, obviously, is to make money if you're in for-profit. But beyond that, we have to ask the question, which I believe is the second imperative to business, not just why are you in business is to make profit, but also why are you making profit, right? And so it's obviously to stay in business, but that deeper why, that sense of purpose and that cause really allows your business to have a soul. Now, we don't talk a lot about soul in business. I think it's a term that I started talking about when I came out of over 20 years of nonprofit and full-time ministry work. Used to be a full-time pastor. I talked about soul all the time. And then when I came into business, that terminology around your soul, and I call it bringing your soul to work. You really can't bring your soul to work when where you work doesn't have a soul, right? So when we talk about the workplace having a soul, we're talking about having a force for good. There's something that compels that business to do more than just be profitable, to also be purposeful. And I like to bring those two terms of purpose and profitability together and ask the question, is your business how is your business being purposeful and profitable? And those things are purposability. It's purpose and profitability. So the purposability of your business is really a circle of success in terms of being able to engage employees and customers in your community and to give back. And in doing so, it drives the business to greater success, becomes more profitable. And the commitment that you make as an organization is that as profit grows and as the company grows, so does the good that we do. This becomes a symbiotic relationship of give and take between those that work for you and those that are leading within your organization and your business as a whole. So as a business grows, you commit to doing more good, giving opportunity for employees to give back, and doing so strategically. So if you're on this workshop and you may be leading a nonprofit, and you say, well, you know, this is just for for-profits, I would say that's not true at all. If anything, you learning this process will help you to partner with your corporate sponsors and create corporate partnerships where you're not only receiving donation or receiving volunteerism and time, but you're also giving them strategy in order how to implement a culture of good and embed that within the organization. So it's a huge value add as a nonprofit leader to be able to help your corporate partners to build this type of culture within their organization. And if you're on here and you're a for-profit company leader, what is the cause that your organization is going to rally around in 2022? What is the cause your organization will rally around in 2002? This question allows us to really have an understanding of, all right, there's a force for good, we'll call that a cause. And there's a lot of companies that do good. I'm sure all of you have some form of give back and doing good. The question what I would have is how do you maximize the opportunities that you're affording to your employees, where it's no longer just maybe one day a year or every once in a while or unpredictable giving back, where you have a sign up sheet and a few people get involved. What we're looking within the culture of good is really culture work. And so culture, as I said earlier, is how most people feel, believe, and behave most of the time. And so having a cause to rally behind allows the collective community of your workforce to get behind something that's bigger than the everyday work that in the tasks and everything that needs to get done, and gives the entire organization a sense of why. It gives a sense of purpose. It gives a sense of meaning. It allows and gives permission for employees to care about something beyond their everyday work, but it also does focus on how is my everyday work aligned with this good. And that's going to be a key that we're going to discuss today. So how do we teach companies how to find the cause of their business? I'm going to go over 4 questions, and I'm going to read these. And after each one of these questions, I want you actually to take some time, and I'm just going to give you, I'm going to set a timer here, and I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer these questions. Each time, there's no right or wrong questions, but I'll give you a little bit of some help in answering these in the way that I think will be most advantageous for us to get through this process to get today through the workshop. So what does my company do? This is your what, and how would I describe that to an 8-year-old? This means no business jargon, not talking too deep into all the products. What do you offer in terms of service? What problem are you helping? What is it that you do on a daily basis? And how would you describe that to an 8-year-old? So I'll give you an example, and then give you 1 minute without me talking to focus on this question. We work with an organization that provides or supplies doors and fireplaces to contractors. That's what they do. They get the measurements, they cut for the hole for the doorknob, they send it out to the contractor, it's ready for install. Same with the fireplaces. So in this process of finding their cause, they discovered that what we do as a company is we provide comfort, warmth, and security for people. It was that simple. I'll give you one more example. There was a hotel owner, owned, I believe, 3 or 4 hotels, and their cause that they defined was we give people a home away from home. That's what they do. And so what we're looking for in this is, what does my company do and how would I describe that to an 8-year-old? I've had other company leaders give real long examples of what they do or copy paste off their website. I can almost promise you this question cannot be answered by anything on your website just yet. Just simply answer, how do you describe that to an 8-year-old? So I'll give you 1 minute to work through that on your piece of paper there. If you're getting done, feel free, if you'd like to, add it into text message. As I said, there's no right or wrong question or answer. We can work through some of your answers if any of you want to offer your answer there on the chat. All right. Would anybody like to offer their answer on chat if anybody did that. That's awesome. That's great. We help people get to work, family, and friends. That's great. Yeah, this is exactly what we're talking about. Victor, I love your answer. Richard, great answer. I know, Victor, you obviously are owner leader within a car dealership, and that's exactly what we're talking about. We help elderly and disabled adults with their daily tasks in their home. And what we're doing is we're simplifying our what. Now, obviously, many of you probably appreciate Simon Sinek. We'll start with why. We teach actually start with what, because we understand within business that what you're doing is already what you're doing. Once you know what you're doing, when you discover your why, then you can make the alignment between the two, which is what we're about to do. So here's how we do that. We want to bring in the soul of a nonprofit into for-profit work, okay? And so the next question, I'll give you a minute to answer. Thank you, Amanda, for answering as well. Animal well-being and public safety, great. So with unlimited resource, say I was Bill Gates, and I'm not, so sorry to disappoint you today. I was Bill Gates and I met you, and we sat down over a cup of coffee, and I simply asked, what do you do as a business? And you answered, we help people get to work, family, and friends. And now we're to say, okay, Victor, I'm going to give you unlimited resource, whatever that means to you. Say it's billions of dollars that are completely yours. You can start a charity or nonprofit that will serve what you do as a business. And it could be global. Again, unlimited resource. And this is where you want those within your leadership team. And the reason we're going through these questions is not for just you to simply answer these. It's for you as a leader to meet with your team and go through these questions together. This is one of this right here. What I'm sharing within the workshop is a couple different workshops that we do with companies. And these are the questions we ask them. And we process through this next one, which is, if I were to give you unlimited resource and you had to serve what you do as a business, see, this is why we start with what, we move into this. What charity would you start across the country, across the world, globally? What would that be? I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer that question. Jack, thank you for sharing that as well. Yep, your company does homeowner insurance. You help people buy a new house. Perfect. Those are great.
Yes.
All right. Now, normally we give everyone a little more time within, if this were just the workshop with these questions, but I think it is helpful to give a limited amount of time because it gets our brains kicked in really quick, and you haven't eaten lunch yet, so, and you've had coffee, so I know we can do this. With unlimited resource and serving our what charity will we start? Sure, a fund to help all pet owners with keeping their pets in homes. If you had billions of dollars, easy, right? And that is really what we want to do with the leadership team, is we want them to think really big and outside of what resources are readily available right now. Because when we start with what resources are available, we miss the opportunity. So now we're thinking big opportunity. We're thinking beyond the norm, um, and we're going into a force for good that can really change the world in a positive way. Love it, Jack. Free down payments to buy a house. Count me in, right? So here we have a limited resource, and to burst the bubble, I'm not able to give billions of dollars out today, but with the current resources, and this is where we go from big to what can we do. So rather than starting with our what resources we have available, we dream with no limits. From those no limits, then we start to look at what current resources do we have, and in serving our what good can we begin doing right now? So that's the next question that leads into what do we commit to doing now as a leadership team. So let me give you an example of how this played out with the hotel owner. In owning those hotels, he recognized that he was providing a home away from home for people. Interestingly, what he identified that he had resources around were the resources that were available to him, because they would end up with a lot of furniture and mattresses and blankets and really leftover items that were stored in a warehouse that were kind of just sitting there. And every once in a while, maybe they would donate a couch or something else, but they identified something that was even greater, which in providing a home away from home, he would want to open up, obviously connecting and supporting homeless shelters across the world and creating programs where they are able to come into their own ownership of those homes. But because he didn't have unlimited resource, what he identified were the resources he did have. I think I'm getting a little feedback on one of the, Victor, I think I'm getting some feedback if you can mute. Thanks, brother. So he was able to look at all the resources he had at the end of the month and recognize that he could partner with local homeless shelters in the area where he was doing business and partner with them and begin to supply all the furniture and bedding and lamps and everything that was at his disposal that he didn't recognize in the moment that there was an opportunity there. Now, what's key about what do we commit to doing now, this has to start with leadership, right? If the leadership team of your organization is not bought into building a culture of good or this type of culture that gives back and is intentional about how we care for one another in our community, this goes nowhere. Culture work has to be owned from leadership. It's owned by leadership. It's going to be reinforced by leadership, and it's lived by everyone. Everyone will eventually own it, but if you don't get leadership buy-in early on, this allows for leadership buy-in early on. And here's one secret that I would add to these questions, or one additional question that you can start off by asking those leaders that you bring into these questions to come on the other side with a cause that you can get behind in 2022, is asking each one of those individual leaders where they give back and where they do good and where they feel passionate themselves. And that allows them to personalize this process, and it becomes more than just simply an effort or another program that we're kind of stapling onto the side of the business, but this also becomes something that is very much embedded within the company, because everyone's taking it personal, and in doing so, we can make commitments based on that. So with current resources and serving our what good can we begin to do right now? So I'm going to give you 1 minute and you can process through that as well, and then we'll move on to the next step of building a culture of good. I love that, Richard. Provide self-help resources, partner with a local health coach. That's great. Hmm. For those of you, again, that are in the nonprofit space, start to think about how you can begin to teach this to your corporate partners or potential prospect partners, where in reaching out to them for a partnership, you're also allowing them to know that you're not, the intention is not simply to write a check to them or to just, support from a distance, but you're actively going to um, engage your employees and eventually your customers in the process of giving back and partnering with that local charity or that effort that you potentially start as a grassroots effort in your community. My wife and I started a backpack giveaway almost 20 years ago, and we had money to buy 25 backpacks with school supplies. And we had a community of faith that every year we kept growing that. We eventually got it to 1,000 backpacks. When I stepped into business, we launched a backpack giveaway. It wasn't connected to any charity necessarily, but we were a decentralized culture in 35 states at the time, the business that I started Culture of Good in. And we did a backpack giveaway across the country, and we're able to take the some marketing dollars and reallocate that toward giving back backpacks, and then vendors started getting involved and donating toward the effort as well. And I'm happy to say that after just 7 years of doing backpack giveaways within the business and other businesses being involved and even competitor businesses joining us and doing that good, which I think is totally cool. We gave away our millionth backpack last year, which is nuts. But I think it's really crucial to start small and build. Again, as we grow as a business, we grow the good that we're doing, and that's what we're looking for. Now I'm gonna, this is the main bulk of the questions, and now I'm gonna move forward in how to engage employees, customers, and community. So one of the things that we wanna do is host a big good event. Eventually we'll get to this concept of big good, our good, my good. And that's a system that you can begin implementing right away. A big good is company-wide. And so what we're looking at is an organization-wide event that is aimed at doing good for the organization's cause. So this is an organization-wide event. Now this takes some effort to plan and implement and facilitate. So as you're building your culture team, you want to look at 3 different types of people or persons that you want on the team. You're going to want help with facilitation. Now, this is assuming that you're the champion of this work. It's what we call the sponsor. So we partner with the sponsor. So you as a sponsor will want to build a team that is going to help with overall facilitation of Culture of Good throughout the year. This could be everything from meeting with them and ensuring that you're on track with scheduling and getting all supplies and everything in place for the big good event that's coming up. You also have event team people within your culture team. This allows for the preparation, but also the day of. So these are people that are going to hit the ground running, boots on the ground with you to get the event off the ground and really rocking. The third person or persons that you want on your culture team is your storytellers. You want those that are telling the story of the big good event that's coming up. Who are you telling the story to? Internally to your coworkers, externally to your customers, and to your community. So you're sharing the story to inspire your employees internally, but also inspire your customers and your community. Obviously, you'll be reaching out to your community. There's so many assets out there and so many organizations that could really use your help. Always ensuring that it aligns with what you do as a business, as we just did that work, allows for your employees and your customers for it to connect and to make sense. It makes sense for Patagonia to go into national parks, invite their customers and their employees to go in and do events where they're cleaning up the national park and pathways for families to be able to enjoy the national parks. That makes sense, right? Does it hurt for them to do any other kind of good? No. But the most helpful thing is for there to be alignment. So we want there to be really good storytellers that are telling the story before the big good event, taking pictures and video during, and sharing the story afterwards. Now, what is important about the big good event? It needs to be scalable. So dependent on how big you are, you want to look at how scalable is this effort? Can everyone be involved in this work? You don't want to simply say, we're going to do this good and take pictures of a few of your executives that are out doing some good and then show it to all the employees and say, oh, look how much our company cares. No. A culture is how most people feel, believe, and behave most of the time. So what we're looking at is the scalability, accessibility, is it aligned, and is it inspiring, right? A very simple example of this is, rather than just doing a food drive and collecting food and donating that food, why not do a food drive, have everyone involved in that, in the delivery, and also potentially in the process of being a part of a soup kitchen and sitting down with those in your community that benefit from those programs and being a part of the experience of it. We want this work to be inspiring, and if it's not inspiring, it's not going to last. It doesn't become sticky. So we want people's souls to come alive in some way over the course of building a culture of good. So step 3 is to share your good authentically. So we want to share the good authentically. We don't want to share good simply because we want to be seen or to brag, but we do want our company to be known for doing good. Again, the culture of good is a business differentiator. It's an advantage for your company to be known as building a culture of good because you're recruiting employees that care about that. I was talking to someone last night and I said, really, a company shouldn't want to recruit employees that aren't involved in giving back and doing good, right? We want employees that are already active in caring and doing good. And as you promote your business through this good, you're going to attract the right type of talent to your business. And in doing so, you can also share this good with the customer as well. So in inviting the customer into your culture is far different than simply saying, would you like to give $5 to Red Cross? This is the idea of saying, I know my customers, and I'm not just going to do good within the employee base, but I'm also going to share it with the customers and the community to see how we can all make an impact on the workplace and the world together. So this is a little quote that I like to say quite a bit, is that we should never do good to be seen, but we should always be seen doing good. So this is less about bragging and more about inspiring. If we share the good we do, we inspire others to do good with us. And that's a plus in business. 4th step. And again, there's going to be 6 steps, and then I'll give about 10 to 15 minutes of questions. I'll have you unmute in just a moment and discuss ideas that you may have that I think would be an opportunity to further this discussion. So one of the things that we're transitioning within the culture of good, or not necessarily transitioning, but adding to, is this right here, is identifying and aligning your values. Now, values are values are values. We have a list of them. Most companies have them. If you don't have values, we do have what's called our 5 promises. Our 5 promises can be adopted as values. We know that these lead to building a culture of good. So if you're interested in learning more about the 5 promises, they are: we're going to care about people in the world around us. We're going to drive the business to greater success so we can do more good. We're going to connect with those around us. We're going to inspire others to do good with us. And we're going to be authentic in our words and actions. Before, we would like to align our promises to values, but what we found is that adding new language there is culture shift. And so what we want to do at Culture of Good moving forward is amplify your current values or ask the question, is it time for a values refresh? How do you know it's time for a values refresh? Well, you may not have done one for a year or two. And some of us like to hold on to our values for 10 years, but I would say as a company, as you evolve, your values do. As you grow, your values do. So I would encourage you to reach out to us or anyone else that does values work. You may have someone in your organization that can coach you through that. Certainly do that values work, get a refresh. And then I'm going to ask you to do 6 things with those values. And really quick, I'm going to go through these and I'll send this deck out. And if you'd like to unpack this further, please let me know. We want to measure the values without losing the soul of the business. How do you measure culture, right? There's this big question. Culture seems very out there and mystical. How do we objectively do that? Here's how we do it. Individual leaders subjectively will assess themselves on a scale of 1 to 7 based on the values, how they feel that they're living up to those values. This is all subjective. So I'll show you a little chart I made for a company that had 4 values, and it's really just more like a wheel of life. And you fill in based on a scale of 1 to 7, 1 being, I'm not focused on this value much at all, and I need to. 4 being, this value is a part of my work, but it certainly is an opportunity for me to grow in. And 7 being, you know what, I'm perfect, I have no room for growth. We want to be less than 7 in this evaluation, but some people may feel they live up to that value perfectly. The second step is individual leaders list 1 observable behavior that supports each value in 3 categories, okay? Coworkers, customers, and community. So what we're doing was we're aligning our values and we're creating connected tissue that will bring those 3 concentric circles together and create that sweet spot. So we want each leader with, as you're working through this values work and aligning values, to list 1 observable behavior that they love to see in themselves or their team member that supports a value in 3 categories within experience of coworkers, customers, and community. Now, all of those observable behaviors, you'll want to compile them into a list collectively from this work that you're doing with the leadership team that you're meeting with. All right, this could be your executive team, your owner, CEO need to be involved in that. Everyone that is a decision maker and leader within the organization needs to be a part of this. You compile the list together, and then you recalibrate your scores or your self-assessment. Each person does that, recalibrates their score objectively in the view of those observable behaviors. We may say that we feel we live up to this value, but once we read the observable behaviors that we wrote down and that others wrote down, we need to recalibrate and see where there's opportunity for us to model that as a leader within our organization or for our team in a greater way. And that's what we do next. As individual leaders then commit to modeling 1 behavior for each value for the next 3 months. So if you have 10 values, I would say you need to get down to 5, maybe 6 values as a company. That's my personal opinion. And it's really hard to memorize anything more than 4 to 5 values. So really keeping it around 5 is, I think, a sweet spot. Finding 1 observable behavior for each value that you can model as a leader. When you roll this out to the company, the values to the company, we're going to want to measure in the exact same way. So essentially what you have your leaders do within their teams is do that same process where they're evaluating themselves subjectively. Then you introduce the observable behaviors that were defined through the leadership team that help to support those values, and the individual employees then can assess themselves. We don't want leaders to assess the employees how they're living up to the values, because we don't want people to be punished for not living up to the values. We want the employees to be motivated by what values they want to see greater in their everyday work? What values do they want to model? What have they committed to over the next 3 months? And so every quarter, what you're doing is you're bringing this assessment back out and you're having individuals assess themselves. Now, another secret is you can have them assess themselves. You can have each individual assess their team. How is the team being accountable? How is our team relationship driven? That's an eye opener for the manager. And you can also have each individual employee assess the organization as a whole. How is the organization as a whole solutions focused, right? Based on how they feel. And then once the observable behaviors are introduced, they recalibrate. And this creates more of a habit of not simply feeling something, but asking the question, now that I feel this value or feel like I want to live up to it in a greater way, how do I now observe myself and my team and the organization in doing so? And so we want individual assessments through this, and we will never use the culture of good as a way to punish someone if they don't live up to that. We're constantly reinforcing positive, observable behavior, and it allows for people to know, okay, this is what the organization, there's an expectation behind these values, and we want to support that and live up to it. And so here's our opportunity, and here's the commitment that we're going to make as an individual. And then the manager can then keep accountable the employees to their own commitment. And simply by saying, you committed to going from a 3 to 4 in the next 3 months in terms of relationship driven. How are you doing? What were obstacles that you faced? How, as a leader, can I support you in that? So we're supporting the employee base, living up to the values and really reinforcing and driving the values into a more embedded culture work within the organization. So nothing builds employee engagement, or what we'd say employee fulfillment, like shared values and giving folks the autonomy to make their own decisions. So as we kind of end here with the next step, or the last step, what we want your company to do as you're going through this process. So essentially, we talked about find your cause, the questions that go behind that, identifying that as a leadership team, rolling that cause out to the organization, needs to align with what you do. It needs to support and be supported by the big good event that you commit to, plan, roll out organization wide. Then you begin doing values work, aligning the values with your culture of good efforts. And also in terms of what you do and the cause. Giving employees autonomy is interesting, because when it's a big good event, it's organization wide and quite prescriptive. Now we talk about the process towards the end of the year that will make it sustainable, which is really crucial to the culture of good work. And that is committing to not only big good, but our good and my good. So big good is organization wide. Our good is a team or department event or venture aimed at doing good for a team, department, or the organization's cause. So this is where the team can get behind and work collectively together. Now, this could be supporting the big good, or you can afford that team an opportunity to choose where their passion is, just as a team. Because honestly, you may commit as an organization to do good. It aligns with what you do. It's passionate, it's inspiring. But for the team to have autonomy to choose how they want to give back, this is where we add culture good into the team building and camaraderie in that community building internally. It's the our good. So you give them autonomy to choose what they want to do on a quarterly basis. And then my good, you give individual employees PTO, you pay them to give back where they're most passionate. This is an individual event or venture that is aimed at doing good, most often for a personal cause. So you may have an individual that says, I'm inspired by going into nursing homes, for instance, and giving back to the patients and residents of the nursing home. And I'm inspired by that, but really at the core, what I most care about are animals. And I'd love to go volunteer to shelter. This is my good is full autonomy. We teach that it should not support any type of religious or political campaign. But if you have a church that has a soup kitchen and that individual employee wants to go and work in that soup kitchen and give back, giving that employee paid time off, even starting with 4 hours a quarter, 16 hours a year, something like that really goes far in terms of employee engagement. We would say that the measurement of culture and the big good, our good, my good, eventually what you want to see, and this is a process, this culture work doesn't happen overnight, but we want to see quarterly good happening and values assessment happening on a quarterly basis and reinforcing the culture of good. Predictable cadence of events. So they're scheduled year over year. Employees begin to see, oh, this is an ongoing commitment. We're not going to do this as a one-off event, where this is going to be something we do year over year. And you commit then to that local charity to not just go in and have a day of giving back, but partnering with that charity and actually seeing progress and sustainable change long-term. And again, supported by the CEO and leadership team. Crucial, 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 crucial. I've seen culture of good efforts within organizations start off really strong because of leadership buy-in, but over time they became like every other initiative. This has to not only have initial buy-in, but ongoing support, and the resource behind it needs to be committed by the CEO and the leadership team. And that's why we want to get their buy-in from the beginning, and also ongoing buy-in as an ongoing effort that's committed by the leadership team to not be something that comes and goes. So you are special, so keep being. So we do have a culture cohort coming up. We go through the process of 12 months of doing that work. I'd love to take the rest of our time, 7 or 8 minutes, to answer any questions that you may have around this process. I know it was like this is literally an hour of like 12 months of teaching that we do. But if you go through that process step by step, and I'll send out the slide deck, I would love to hear of your progress and any ways that I can support you throughout that.